So, we have a bit of a problem with the projection equipment today. So we're going to kick it old school. It's going to be chalk and chalkboard today. I hope everybody, you can follow along on the slides on your own laptop computer should you choose. Like I can see the slides on this thing, so it's not like we're completely unguided. So if you guys, I'll call out the slide number I'm on, and you guys can read it off of your laptops if you so choose, but we just don't have any projection today. If that's, you know. Yeah, I apologize to the online people particularly, but we'll just have to make do. And the reason we'll just have to make do.
There is no one available to take your call. Please try again later.
Okay.
There is no one available to take your call. Please try again later.
So, yeah. So there's nobody available to take my call, and I need to try again later. Of course, the problem with that is the class is the class and has to occur during the class, and God only knows when they're going to show up, so, you know, at any rate. So, yeah, also, just for the sake of, me possibly having to leave at very short notice, today is a day where I definitely might have to leave at very short notice. So, yeah, because basically we're pretty sure that my wife's in early labor. So, yeah. You guys know how all that works? Like, it's kind of interesting, really, if you've never heard about it, right? So, there are a couple of things that prevent the baby being born, right? The most important one of these things is, so if you're not familiar with the anatomy, there's a sphincter inside of the reproductive apparatus called the cervix, and under normal circumstances, until the baby is ready, this sphincter has what they call a mucus plug, which is just, you know, it's a disgusting term and it's a disgusting concept, but it is nevertheless human biology. It's kind of gross. Anyway, the dissolution of that impediment allows the sphincter to start dilating, which releases oxytocin, which is the chemical that prompts the positive feedback loop that eventually results in birth. So that's where we are right now, but the process can take days. So I decided to come to work anyway. And if she calls, I might leave on short notice. So that's where we are right now. At any rate, we were talking about binary search trees. How are binary search trees sinking in as a concept? I'm beginning to get some messages from students in the class saying, I'm completely lost in this class. How can I not be completely lost in this class? And so let's address this on a topic by topic basis. Starting with the topic we're on. Binary search trees, how are you finding them? Good? Good. Any thumbs down? I'm assuming it's the people who are coming to class who are doing better in the class. That's like usually a pretty good assumption. So, you know. All right. But I don't mean to call anybody out if the persons who have been sending me emails of that sort are in fact in the room. But anyway, so binary search trees, very rough summary. Somewhat similar to the concept of the binary heap, except the correct way to think about them is describing intervals rather than describing, always having a maximum-minimum relationship between children. We now have an interval relationship between children. In general, binary search trees are best served when middle numbers are highest up in the tree because they tend to divide the data structure more evenly. The more evenly the data structure is divided, the faster it can be searched. Because of course, the search depth, the number of operations it takes to search the tree at maximum is the depth of the tree. Hopefully a concept we're all well familiar with. The problem with the binary search tree, because there is nothing in particular which constrains it to be equal or complete in any way, the branches can get quite long, and the length of these branches is dependent on the order in which the nodes are added to the binary search tree. So, while the worst case scenario is quite improbable, and this is still a good overall data structure, the worst case performance is quite bad. Going from logarithmic to linear is pretty bad. And basically the next topic, which we will get into today, is all about tree balancing. We're going to examine a number of strategies to produce balanced binary search trees. Most particularly, we're going to talk about 2-3 trees, red-black trees, and we'll talk a little bit about B trees. But for now, let's just talk about regular binary search trees, as most of the operations will transfer to other types of trees with little or no modification. All right? So, last time we were just talking about some of the extended operations on binary search trees, how we perform deletion and maximum and minimum and that sort of thing. So I think it's probably useful to go over the types of deletion very briefly. So we talked about lazy deletion, right? Under lazy deletion, you do not actually modify the nodes composing the tree. What you do, if your binary search tree represents a symbol table, is you set the value of that symbol in the table to be null. When you do that, the null value indicates that this thing doesn't exist. Null is disallowed as a correct value, so we can use it for other purposes like this. The way that the slides describe this, by the way, we're on slide 25 at the moment. The way that the slides describe this is essentially leaving a tombstone inside of the data structure. Now, this is, a reasonable approach for a number of reasons. It does not require a restructuring of the binary search tree, and it's less work. The node can still be used to guide searches, right? So to an extent, that node can still be useful. The only problem with lazy deletion, of course, is that it means your organism can grow but never shrink, right? And a good data structure also has the ability to get smaller as items are deleted, right? So that's lazy deletion. Any questions? Okay. On to slide 26. So let's talk about Hibbard deletion. Hibbard deletion is the deletion algorithm if you want to restructure your tree to remove the node which you wish to delete. Right? So there are a couple of cases. This is kind of most of the difficulty in understanding and remembering how binary search trees work is, for each operation, things are done slightly differently in each of the cases that are, each of the cases that you can encounter. A node, basically, it mostly has to do with, the number of children that a node has, right? If a node has 0 children, obviously it's easy to delete. You just pluck it off the end of the branch, right? If a node has one child, that's reasonably easy as well. You just substitute the one child for the node that you're deleting. Just, click the child into its grandparent, and there you go. If the node has two children, things get a slight bit more complicated, right? So, just to demonstrate, if we wanted to delete a node that has one child, or if we want to delete a node that has 0 children, very simple. We simply, let's say we're deleting 12, right? We find 12 and delete it, producing a null link. Nice and simple. Slide 27. Now, let's discuss deleting a node that has a single child, right? It's reasonably simple. Again, let's say we are deleting 10, right? You have to perform the search to find the 10. Once the 10 is found, you delete that node, and you redirect these guys to point to each other, right? Reasonably simple. There we go. Now, you know what? I think I'm going to add one node here, just so I have a good example for the two-child node pair. All right? With me so far? Everything's pretty understandable so far, I would assume. Slide 28. We now have a more difficult case. Let's say we want to delete 4, right? So this is the way that you do that, right? So you have to promote a child, right? A child of a child. So if you notice, this guy, right? And you have to sort of imagine that these might have arbitrarily large chains attached to them, right? So if you'll notice, if we're thinking about intervals, right? Right now we've got 2 to 4 to 6 being an interval. If we want to restructure this tree in a kind of an easy way, what we could do is we could promote the 3 into the 4's place. This would preserve the structure of the binary search tree, right? So, this works a little bit better if this thing has like another, let's imagine this thing has a couple more, right? And let's imagine this one has one more as well, right? So, what you want to do, basically you have a choice. It's a symmetric operation either way. But you want to follow down the path of either this subtree to find the minimum of it, or this subtree to find the maximum of it. And that's the node that you want to replace for the 4, right? Because we know, because of the binary search tree property, the closest number to the minimum of this tree, right, will be the smallest number that's still larger than 4, right? Therefore, it's safe to swap it in. You're not going to disorder the tree by doing so. Same thing on this side. If you swap in the maximum of the left tree, there's nothing that exists in the data structure that is greater than the maximum of the left tree by the binary search tree property. Therefore, by swapping it in, that's still a safe operation, right? So, and you can also at any rate. So let's imagine, just for the sake of argument, that we are taking the 3 and doing that. So remove the 3 from here, insert it here. There we go, Hibbard deletion. Does that make sense? Any questions?
What happens if 3 has other children?
So if 3 had other children, that's a good question. So let's just put the thing back the way we found it for a moment. So because this is the maximum of this branch, we know that it can't have any right children. It must have, if it has any, it has a left child, right? So, because we have this is still a null link. That's how we tell it's the maximum of the subtree, right? So, let's see here. You delete it from this tree using the same Hibbard deletion algorithm, right? So this would be Hibbard deletion on a node with 1 child, right? So we simply remove and replace, right? Then we substitute the 3 up higher on the data structure, and bing bang boom. And that'll work no matter, you can have a fairly, if 2.3 had 2 children, if this was a complete and perfect binary tree for 10 levels going down past 2.5, this would still work. Make sense? Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Okay, good.
There is no one available to take your call. Please try again later.
All right. So we have a question.
Sorry, so did we find the maximum of the left subtree, or is it minimum of the right subtree?
It's an arbitrary choice. Either one will work. The way that the text, the selection that the textbook made is the minimum of the right tree. But again, it's completely symmetric. It's kind of like how it doesn't matter if this is less than equals or this is greater than equals, it doesn't matter where you put the and equals case. You'll end up with, a mirror image of the same data structure, kind of. It's like one of those tiny little arbitrary mathematical decisions that doesn't affect, either way you go, the binary search tree property will be maintained, and that's really all we care about. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, do it the way the textbook does it, do it some way other, if you want to be different, it doesn't really matter. All right? Any other questions? Cool. So, slide 29 now. There's a picture of a branch of a binary search tree. This is kind of, this branch was generated using random number generation and is meant to typify the types of binary search trees that would be generated in practice. You can see that, you're not, it's not terrible, right? It's not too bad in terms of tree completeness, but we can make some improvements here. All right. Apparently, it's a long-standing open problem with these things to simply and efficiently delete things with respect to binary search trees. But I don't know. I don't think that's too bad as a deletion algorithm. Next slide. slide 30. So our binary search tree costs, as compared to binary search and sequential search, you can see that our worst case costs for search and insertion look no better than sequential search. We are both in linear domain because, remember, our worst case scenario for a binary search tree is the thing is all in one line and essentially a singly linked list or a doubly linked list. It's a linked list in the worst case scenario. However, I would turn your attention to the average case cost. These average case costs are generally calculated assuming data is being added from a uniform probability distribution. These types of things are definitely subject to the biases that may exist in the data you're trying to organize. But in general, our search hit time is 1.39 log n. That's log base 2n, which is quite good. And our insertion time is also 1.39 log n, because of course, once we have found the place at which we want to insert, when the insertion procedure for binary search tree is simply to find the end of the branch and add it to the end of the branch. So it's basically a search operation, so it makes sense it would take the same amount of time as a search operation. This constitutes quite a big improvement over the binary search. The binary search for an ordered array still requires you to, while the searching itself is a logarithmic time algorithm, so you can find the place you want to insert in logarithmic time. To actually insert into an ordered array requires you to shift all of the elements in the array past the point that you want to insert down by 1. This will take on average, at any rate, this is linearly proportional, right? Because at maximum, you're shifting the entire array down because we want to insert it right at the beginning, right? So we have come up with a searching algorithm with both logarithmic time insertion and logarithmic time searching, which constitutes a vast improvement. Any questions? Our outstanding problem remains addressing the worst case runtime of the binary search tree. If you'll remember, this is kind of the same way that we developed the union find algorithm. We developed the algorithm. It's an improvement on the last one. We improved on the last one by addressing its worst case scenario. So now we're going to come up with some algorithms which address the worst case scenario of the binary search tree. Make sense? Good. Any questions? If you have a question and I miss you, just throw something at me or something. Okay? Just not hot fluids, because you might get people other than me. It's okay if you burn me with hot fluids, but have some consideration for your for your classmates. So, yes, slide 31. Is it just me, or is it quieter in here without that projector running? Yeah, it seems a lot quieter in here, which is fascinating because that thing's in a bloody room, Incidentally, you can get into that room. They've left the door unlocked. You can sneak into the projection room if you want. I won't tell anyone. This would probably be a pretty good place to make out, during a lecture. That would be hilarious. Anyway, not that I encourage or condone such things. So, I've hit the point many, many times. I guess I've been motivating balanced binary search trees for quite a few slides now, so I don't think I need to do it this one more time. But if you need a summary of why if you need a summary of why binary search trees have a worst case runtime that's linear, look at slide 31. So, and to summarize again the information which is presented in the chart on slide 30, if we assume that the keys are inserted in a uniform random order, then a BST built from n random trees will have search hits and misses and insertions at about 1.39 log base to n comparisons on average. Because, of course, it depends on the completeness of the tree. Randomly generated binary search trees are reasonably complete, but again, you might be kicked in the face by the worst case scenario. You have no protection against it. Right? So, we have another slide. Slide 33 is another visualization of a randomly ordered binary search tree. Yes?
Just wondering, why is the average case of 1.3 log base 3 would not say log base 1.39?
Because in order for the worst case runtime to be log base 1.39, you would have to be saying that each node has 1.39 children. Right? The 2 comes from the 2 comes from the order of the number of children in the tree, not from like the typical filledness. The 1.39 is a coefficient derived through experimentation. So I can't give you a more thorough explanation of the derivation of that 1.39 coefficient, except to say this is what they've experimentally derived. So if you want to read their papers, I'm sure they have a good explanation of it themselves. But personally, I haven't read their papers, I've just read the textbook. Well, skimmed the textbook might be a better term for it. Did I just admit that? Uh-oh. All right. Anyway, so slide 34. Tree balancing is an extremely useful approach to constraining your runtimes so that you get the worst case performance that BST promises on but doesn't quite deliver, right? There are several different varieties of tree balancing algorithms. T trees are used in main memory databases such as MySQL. Treeps are randomized tree structures. Treeps, it's like tree heap, right? It randomizes the tree structure every time something is inserted. Therefore, if you're randomizing each time slightly every time you insert, then there's like performing some rotations, and we're going to look and see what a rotation is. It's essentially like not only do you have to insert everything incorrectly to end up with a worst case scenario tree, you also have to get extremely unlucky on RNG to have a unbalanced tree as well. But again, not a perfect solution. The better solutions that we're going to talk about are 2-3 trees. 2-3 trees are a generalization of the normal binary search tree algorithm to include nodes that may contain more than one value and more than 2 children. And we're going to see how this, actually works. This is something that actually works if we continue it on. Red-black trees are going to be a concept developed from 2-3 trees. Basically, red-black trees are 2-3 trees but you avoid that messy problem of having to have different types of nodes rather than have, a 2-node and a 3-node, you have links which are colored either red or black. They fundamentally represent the same data structure, just in slightly different ways, right? And then we're going to talk briefly about B trees. B trees are a generalization of the 2-3 tree, which allows any number of values to be stored in a particular node. If you're wondering what the applications of these sorts of things are, B trees are used for page lookup on hardware, on hard drive page reads. So the way that hardware works, basically, it's like way too much work to request and receive individual bytes from hardware, right? Like for example, magnetic drives. What magnetic drives are really, really good at is reading in a bunch of like consecutive data from itself into main memory. If you're hopping, because you have to physically move a read head in order to read a different segment of the hard drive, right? So generally speaking, hard drives read stuff in large chunks. These are called pages, right? So page access is very slow, right? But once the page has been accessed and loaded, it can be very fast. And B trees are used to organize and make searchable page accesses in file systems. Something like your NTFS file system, which most of you will be running on Windows, even if you've never heard of NFTS, I think it's NFTS. How many people have heard of NFTS? Not nearly enough of you for COMPSCI majors. That's like the organization system that underlies Windows operating systems. That's like the manner in which the file system is structured. And that uses B trees. So like this stuff has actual application in like real operating systems. B trees are kind of cool because they can access, I think it was something like 68 billion pieces of information in 4 steps, which is pretty cool. All right. It's past 9 o'clock. Do you think anybody's at the desk?
There is no one available. Please try again later.
Wow. Like the bulb must be burned out or something. I don't know. It's not powering on. Like, I tried, honestly. Anyway. So much for topic 7. Let us move swiftly on to topic 8. I'm going to download this so I can get the good view. Download. It doesn't really matter for you, but it makes me more comfortable. So, balanced search trees. Topic 8, slide 1, introduction. The further a binary search tree departs from being fully filled, the worse our runtime is. In the worst case, BSTs have no advantage over unsorted arrays. Thus, we commonly employ tree balancing algorithms to improve our worst case runtimes. Enter the 2-3 tree. See, it works, doesn't it? Our goal is to modify the idea of a binary search tree so that it cannot be unbalanced by insertion operations. Obviously, this is going to have to affect the manner in which we insert things. However, it still doesn't make sense to insert things at the top and follow things down to the bottom. That's still way too much work to try to maintain the binary search tree process. Basically, we want to have our cake and eat it too. We want to be able to insert nodes at the bottom of the tree without that causing nodes to be inserted at the bottom of the tree, right? So, this is how things proceed. We now recognize a distinction between 2 nodes and 3 nodes. A 2 node contains a single value. Let's say it's A. We have 2 branches, less than equals A and greater than A. Binary search trees au naturel. All right. Now we have 3 nodes. So the numbering on the node tells you how many children the node is supposed to has at maximum. Obviously, it doesn't have to be filled with children, and in the case of the ones in the leaf row, they won't have any children, right? But so it goes. A 3 node has 3 child branches, right? You have a left, a right, and a middle. We have less than equals A. We have A is less than X is less than equals B. Let's just imagine X is the variable, right? I'll just X, and then X is greater than B. Right? Make sense? So rather than describing a single point of decision where we're going one way or the other, in a 3 node, the 3 node describes an interval, right? Values coming before the interval are shunted down the left branch. Values within the interval go down the middle branch. Values coming after it are shifted down the right branch. Make sense? It's not too bad, right? So, yes, the 2 values in 3 node are the upper and lower bounds of a range. All elements that in that range fall into the center branch. Otherwise, 3 nodes function similarly to normal BSTs. A BST is a 2-3 tree containing only 2 nodes. So there you go. This is why I say that in some respects, if you ignore certain properties of 2-3 trees, this is why 2-3 trees are a generalization of the binary search tree, at least with respect to this property, because using the nodes which we construct the binary search tree with, using these nodes, which are for 2-3 trees, it is possible to construct a regular BST if you just use 2 nodes, right? Using just 2 nodes, everything works just the way you would imagine with a BST, right? But, of course, that would be to completely ignore the advantage of having 3 nodes. So, so let's talk about the search operation. Let me put this guy on the slot on the board. So, in general, what the 2-3 tree ends up looking like is a binary search tree which has a few of the nodes replaced for these double nodes, or the 3 nodes. Right? Make sense? So, searching is going to occur more or less exactly the way it did under a binary search tree. The one exception is, when you hit a 3 node, you have to make 2 comparisons rather than 1, right? You're not just trying to decide whether you're going left or right, you have to decide whether you're going down the middle, right? So for example, searching H, if H is what we're searching for, right? H is less than M, so we travel down this branch. H is not less than E, it's not greater than J, so it's the middle branch we want, and voila, we have found it. Make sense? So far, so good? Cool. Don't worry, things will get complicated very shortly. Because, here's the problem. Insertion becomes somewhat tricky. So, you'll notice that the 2-3 tree written on the board here is a complete 2-3 tree, right? It turns out that so long as you're managing the insertion operations correctly, 2-3 trees maintain perfect balance by construction. So long as the algorithm is being followed, it is impossible to have a 2-3 tree that is not perfectly balanced, that doesn't have all leaf nodes, lying on one line, just like a pyramid, right? So, of course, the reason that, by the way, I'm on slide 4, the reason that regular binary search trees become uneven is that we're just allowed to willy-nilly add nodes to the ends of branches, allowing those branches to grow to a ludicrous proportion, and no values are ever transferred out of branches into other branches, right? So, the insertion procedure, when followed to its conclusion in a 2-3 tree, does grow the tree, but rather than growing from the branches, we grow from the root, and we grow evenly on both sides. This is going to make more sense once we see an example of it. But, yes. So we get the best of both worlds. Essentially, we are adding our nodes where we would expect to at the ends of branches, right? But we propagate changes up through the tree. If they hit the root node, then the root node expands itself, and it does so evenly on both sides, thus maintaining perfect balance. Make sense? A little bit? Conceptually, at least? So here is our insertion procedure. Let's imagine that we are inserting the value k. This is a simple insert that doesn't require any additional modification. The first thing we have to do is we have to search for the correct position of the value we are entering. So we start here, go down this branch. K is greater than j, so we go down this branch, and we end, and we're hitting the end of a node, right? Or we're hitting the end of a branch. We then decide on which side of this L the K should go. Obviously, right? We don't put it on the wrong side. The sides are very important, right? So that's actually a key insight into 2-3 trees. it's not that you're just collecting values and putting them in nodes in an unordered way. The ordering of the nodes inside of the tree is inside of the node is very, very important because it tells you which branch to go down, right? So, we know K comes before L, so we replace this node with one that has K, L, right? So, a leaf that had, or if you're inserting a value into a node and that node only contains one value, it is simple. You just make it into a 3 node and add the value where it should be, right? Make sense? Things get a little more complicated though. So, but you will notice that we did manage to insert a node in this case without expanding the tree, right? There are no additional branches poking down below that line, so we're good. Good. So, case number, or slide number 6. So let's say we're inserting W. Right? We start at the end, R, and then we know that we want to insert the W in here. Right? W happens to be between S and X. So, what we do, we rub this out, WX. There we go. This will now have 4 branches. And you might be saying to yourself, but Mr. Professor, sir, is that not an invalid node type? We have not, that's not in our list of valid nodes. What gives? Right? And I would say, yes, of course, student. The insertion procedure may create temporary 4 nodes, where a 4 node has 4 children. Next time in class, we will see how these 4 nodes decompose and push values back up the tree. All right? We don't just leave them there, we do stuff with them. Very quickly for this one will decompose into X, or something that looks like this. These guys go here, these guys go here. This W gets added to this node, right? So what we end up with as a result of this is X, S, X, R, W. But we'll talk about this more next time.